versus you. It's you 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 versus you. Time to clear your mental, everything you've been through. Looking in the mirror like you're the one with the issues. You against yourself, feel like you against the world. Internally battling all of the trauma.
What's up, everybody? It's Saquon. We are back with episode 8 of the You vs. You podcast. Super duper excited. I got my man back in the building. His episode was so great. Episode 2, we talked about life systems. There was just so much value add jam-packed into that episode that after that episode, we literally, my team, Renault, myself, we had about maybe a 2 to 3 hour conversation just about the episode in and of itself. And that conversation after the podcast was just filled with so many gems. I think that he and I both knew, listen, there's some unfinished business. We have more work to get to so that we can impact our community. We are in acute alignment with regard to our purposes, with regard to our aim. So with that being said, I'm delighted to introduce my brother Renault Ross back to the show. Thank you so much for coming, man.
You're back.
You know, we're informal now. We're not even doing that. We're brothers. It's so great to see you. How have you been, man?
Can I borrow a Benjamin Franklin? I'm just being real with you.
But
I'm good. And let me just say this. It's, brakes on a car don't allow you to go slower. They allow you to go faster. You think about it, though. Think about it, right? And so when I think about this platform, see, a stage is for performance, but a platform is for influence, right? And I had to look up influence. Influence is really a person of impact with their ideas, their actions, and their leadership. And so when I think about what you're doing, you're an influencer and you're changing the lives of others. And we are. And this platform itself is huge. I had to go back. I looked at the episode. I've shared the episode. People need this. They need this when you talk about mental health. We need this. Here's the thing right here. The power of just a smile does 3 things. It shows compassion, it shows empathy, and it shows friendliness. And that's just a smile. And if you throw a hello and a hi with it, it opens an opportunity for connection. So I was so delighted to come back, super excited. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night. In fact, my shirt slept in the bed and I slept on the floor. You talking about voluntary suffering. But thank you for having me back.
Oh, listen, you bet. We are so happy to have you. So last time we were together, we talked about your book, The Diary of the Bulletproof Man.
Yep.
And again, that was incredibly impactful. For those of you that haven't seen that episode, that's episode 2. Again, that's filled jam-packed with a lot of value-add information. But today...
But here's the thing right here, and I was sharing the first segment, the basic needs of a man, and I had someone that said, I need my wife to read this because I talk about food, water, right? Sleep, and the last is sex. He said, I just want to read that one part, but the sex part, right? So just saying, if you want to, back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, so today we are going to talk about his other book. This man is filled with many accomplishments, okay? So he's written multiple publications. Today, specifically, we're going to talk about One Fry at a Time. I had the opportunity to read this book. We tapped one another specifically for this one because this conversation we both want to be shrouded around breaking down the importance of the process, okay? Greatness, happiness, joy. All of these things aren't things that you just stumble upon in happenstance, okay? The majority of us, we already know this is a mental health platform. The majority of us know that we deal with trauma. That's hard enough in itself. But when you're talking about coming out of trauma and trying to adopt the principles contained in this book, again, that's not a happenstance thing. This is a process. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, everything at the end of the day starts with an idea, and that idea is followed by action, right? think about it. An idea without action is useless, right? But action without an idea can be dangerous, okay? But here's the thing is that what I have found is that the mind and being able to imagine anything, imagination is plastic, right? And the way you turn imagination into steel is with process. And if you're able to break that process down in small pieces and then you can make the piece the whole, guess what? You get to your goal, right? I've done that. I do it in my health. I do it in my mindset. I do it in relationship. I do it with everything, right? And that's the essence of what we're going to talk about, the book One Fry at a Time. And it's funny because when I shared the title with someone and they said, well, that's all I can do is eat one fry at a time, right? So we're not just talking about eating fries, but we're talking about the mindset that really goes behind it. Because here's the thing at the end of the day, is everybody, they want what's on the other side of what they don't want to do, right? At the end of the day. But it's possible. When I think about money, $1.2 trillion trades hands every single day. $1.2 trillion, right? And you're just asking for $1 million, right? That's like giving a Tic Tac to a whale. Have you ever given a Tic Tac to a whale?
No.
I tried that one time. He wanted me, he wanted a Tic Tac. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. You just said something so profound. Turn imagination into steel.
Yep.
Now, me and this brother here, we work out in the gym. You already know that. He's been encouraging me to start my cardio, which I've done that. I think I'm about 2 weeks in. And I appreciate that, man, because I already see results.
Yeah.
Seriously, yeah. I changed my diet. But turn imagination into steel. So our first cardio session, I'm on the Stairmaster with this guy, right? And we're talking, right? And, I'm getting used to being back in cardio mode, right? So I'm a little tired. I'm not really focused cognitively, right? But then he says something that makes me pull focus. And then a second after that, I look down and I'm like, this guy is on level 20 on the Stairmaster, all right? Now, some of y'all might think that I'm capping. So I have the video to actually prove, because when I saw it, I was so dumbfounded, I had to record this. I needed documentation of it. He's on the highest level of the Stairmaster. 20, having a casual conversation with you, right? And here's the kicker. We were on the Stairmaster for 30 minutes. Again, I have the video. I could not believe it. Like, I was just so astounded by just this exhibition of physical prowess, but that's human excellence, man. Right? So I brought that up, A, because again, you said turn imagination into steel, but B, that's a perfect segue into the beginning of what we're talking about here. Because when I got off the Stairmaster with you, you were so incredibly encouraging. And you were like, you know what, how do you get to level 20? You start at 1, right? You start at wherever you are. So I was on 7, right? So he's like, you do 7 for a week, right? You push yourself to go to 8. Right? Another week after that, you go to 9, so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about the incremental process of greatness, right? Which is a perfect segue to chapter 1, seeing the bigger picture through a smaller lens. Talk to us about that, brother.
I love it, right? And so one thing I did want to comment on is that when you're operating at a high level, it's the consistency that keeps you there. And what I find is a lot of times people will change their level up based off of who they have next to them, right? So if you're used to a level 4 and you go to a level 20, you won't be able to sustain that for a long period of time because you got to gradually work your way through the steps. And what I have shared and taught is it's all about the process, because your body gets used to it, and then you can gradually go up, and before you know it, you're not really thinking about it. When I do level 20, it's like that's the highest that it could go. And it was interesting when I first started. I started on 3, 4, and I said, well, how high does this go? And I found out it was level 20. I said, why did they put level 20 up there? I never saw anyone doing it. So I did it, but it was to prove something to myself that it can be done, all right? And there's actually another gym that has level 25, and I was like, how dare? So I went over to that gym and I had to do level 25. But the net of it is, I appreciate you accepting the challenge in a way where we're both sharpening each other. So when I see you going up each week and I get the testimonials, it sends something to me, right? So I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being a part of this journey. And hopefully you guys see the video. I mean, this guy is getting in as well. I get the snapshots, and I'm like, can't wait to get in there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, right before we segue to that, every time I talk to you, you say something that's so impactful and profound, and we have to unpack it. But we have plenty of time today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we get together. Now, I'm thankful for my mental health journey. Specifically, with what he said, I'm thankful for adopting the growth mindset.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we'll encounter someone doing something as magnificent as that.
Yeah.
Right? Being on the Stairmaster at 20. Now, in a traumatized mind, a victimized mind will look at you and then look at myself and say, you know what? He has something that I don't. He's able to do this because he has some type of attribute that I just wasn't born with. It's just not in my cards. Life doesn't have it for me. Life is shit, so on and so forth, right? And that couldn't be further from the truth, right? And you gave the gems. You gave the keys to the kingdom. No, the thing that separates you from me right now is a small little P word called process. And you just broke that process down so eloquently, so I appreciate that. So that's our first, talking to this guy, that's probably our fifth beneficial takeaway for today already. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can chew on so much stuff. I love this.
You feel that? You feel that tricep? Right?
I feel it. Right. That's what I'm saying.
You feel that tricep,
Okay.
right? We working.
It'll be 11-12 next week too, y'all. You know. And I love this guy because it is a dialogue, right? I mean, we got a script that we'll stick to, but it's a dialogue, and I think that's what's important because I've seen, I've heard, I've been a part of so many different podcasts where folks make it sound difficult. It's not difficult, right? The key here, you said it's the P word, the process, but it's also consistency. And then underneath consistency is this thing called discipline, right? And what you find is that when you get to the top, you'll get to the top in the Stairmaster. Because when I'm on the Stairmaster, I'm actually a business athlete, right? I'm thinking about that email I got to take care of. And so that's the beauty, is that we can take this process into all that we do. And we're motivating people around us. So here's the thing right here is that when you are striving for greatness, right? No one knows what you're going through. We're going to talk about this in the book because a lot of times people see what's on you, but they don't see what's in you, right? They see what's on you, but they don't see what's going on in you, in our head, in our heart, and at home. And a lot of times you come to the gym and you get a chance to take it out on whatever you're dealing with. So again, thank you for being part of the journey. Thank you for the conversation, because I know where he's headed at. And iron does sharpen iron, because here's the thing. I know the way, I go the way, I show the way, but we're doing that together. And we have so many people that's looking at this podcast that subscribe to what we're doing, that can feel the energy, and also the brotherly love as well too, man. So I'm ready to dive in. So if you want to,
Absolutely.
if you want to tee it up, man, I'll knock
One
it off.
fry at a time.
One
You
fry
knock
at
it
a time.
off. Seeing the bigger picture through a smaller lens.
Somebody got to ask me, how did you get the title?
How did you get the title?
Here's the thing. So I was at a business dinner, and I was sharing my week with one of my colleagues. And this is a past career when I was chief technology officer for a Fortune 500 company. And I would have to come in and give strategic briefings, keynotes. And I was talking about my mandatory Monday and my tedious Tuesday and my wardrobe Wednesday and my tremendous Thursday and my fabulous Friday, my spontaneous Saturday, and who could forget Super Sunday, right? A day of feeling myself in the spiritual realm, but being able to mentor and coach and teach others. And he said, wow, how do you do all that? He says, kind of like one fry at a time processes. I said, one fry at a time? I said, wow, be a great book. So that's how I came up with the idea. But seeing the bigger picture through a smaller lens is really thinking about our lives in that we create the narrative, okay? We create the visuals, right? We create the sound cues. So therefore, it's this thing called life. If you think about life, it's just a big movie. And so this script that we create, right? We're the author of the script. So when you think about a narrative, right? There's the orientation, the beginning, right? There's some situation, there's some problem, plot twist, right? right? So when you think about going through life, this happened to me. Okay, what do I do about it, right? Do I cry about it? Do I pray about it? Or do I just take action? Somebody hurt me. And here's the thing is, when you fail, I don't say fail is really first attempt in learning, not losing, right? So failure brings feedback. And anytime something happened to me, if I could just be real with you all, I have a couple businesses, global, sales, operations, finance, marketing, IT, legal. I got people in those different divisions, right? It's a lot moving on, right? To be a CEO, a chief servant leader, right? A lot of stuff. And this week I was dealing with big legal issue, right? And just dealing with that. But what I had to think about is, what is the lesson behind here, right? It was a contract that we had to deal with. But guess what? We were able to resolve it. I learned from it, and we're able to build through it. And so you got to see the bigger picture through a smaller lens. And failure isn't final. And so I think that's really the first chapter is, no matter what you're going through, look at it as you're creating this life. You're going to deal with situations. You're going to deal with challenges. And a lot of times you'll try to skill your way through it, but sometimes you got to will your way through it. And here's the thing is that you may have more skill than I do, but you don't have more will than I do at the end of the day.
Right. Wonderfully said. Now, for me, when I read seeing the bigger picture through a smaller lens, again, everything for me is filtered through a lens of mental health. That was incredibly profound, because that's sort of what we have to do. I immediately thought of Joe Dispenza, right? You have to be able to think greater than how you feel, right? So if I can't think greater than the feelings that my body is producing, then my life will never produce any type of lasting change, right? So now we're talking about endocrinology, like thought, feeling loops, right? Like thoughts create a feeling, feelings create behaviors, behaviors create actions, actions create decisions and environments, so on and so forth, right? But we have to be able to get in. We have to sneak into that loop or that process to be able to begin rewriting that script, as you eloquently mentioned. Like, we're scripts to a movie, we're writing scripts. So we have to be able to write that script. Two people can be looking at the same thing and see something completely different, right? You may see opportunity, I may see lack, right? Now, not to get religious or anything like that, but yeah, heaven and hell, the scripture talks about them being actual places, but I also believe to a certain extent that they're states of existence, right? So I can see, or I can think positively, right, with elevated emotions. I can believe that I've created a heaven for myself, where conversely, the person next to me can be living in a hell, right? Looking at the same thing, occupying the same space at the same time, but there's one major differentiating factor, and that's the mindset.
Well, it's perspective and perception. So if you think about it, perspective will always be how we see something, right? Perspective is the understanding of it. A perception is the understanding of it, right? So, for example, I had a tree that fell over recently, and thank God it fell in the opposite direction than falling on my house, because we wouldn't be here, okay? I wouldn't be here. But I just had the tree cleaned up yesterday, and there was some wood on my neighbor's yard, and I said, well, knock on the door and see if the neighbor want to have that wood cleaned up. And the neighbor said, no, that's firewood. So here I am doing a good deed, right? Having the wood cleaned up, but the perception is that he saw it was as firewood, to your point. And that's why when you think about negative and positive has to coexist, right? It's the polarity of both that gives the whole, right? Good and bad, they coexist, okay? Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had two dark nights, a double dark night? You haven't, right? And so what's interesting is, when I was going through that legal issue last week, right, I was asking myself, all right, how do I deal with this, right? Do I run or do I learn, And I don't like to deal with challenges, but you know what I find is that I grow through my challenge. You know, to your point. But it's all about, you know, how we look at the situation, how we apply that situation, and then not only that, but how do we teach that situation as well? Because you'll see us here again. You're looking at the outside, but being on that Stairmaster and the grit and what goes into it, but the feeling of when you finish. And the shower and just how you feel the rest of the day, right, allows you to see that bigger picture, you know, when you're dealing with a smaller lens.
You said something incredibly impactful, multiple things, but grow through challenge.
Yeah.
And I was literally going to bring up the Stairmaster, but you did it. So we're in alignment, and I love that. So so if I have to grow through challenge, to me that sounds like I need to change the nature of my relationship with challenge. Right? I can speak for myself. Like, I used to view challenge as this cumbersome thing that I just never would want to encounter, right? And then with an external locus of control, believing that I don't have any control over any aspect of my life, I felt like this was some supernatural thing being placed in my way to prove that my life is crap. No. That's the actual apparatus. That situation is the opportunity to grow. You hit the nail right on the head. You know, I don't feel, you know, when I'm on level 9 and we're on the Stairmaster together, like you said, it's grueling, right? But I'm breaking through a mental barrier. And like you said, you know, afterwards, of course, you know, we feel elated, but I have you to look at constantly as that goal, like, hey, this is where I want to go. And I say that to say this, because when we're mired in trauma, right, and our minds are flooded with limited belief systems, right, and that's all we know, and that has shaped and formulated our lives. And then you decide to change and you start incorporating the tools in your toolbox, gratitude, service, responding to challenge in a positive way. That's not a honey-dew melon taste initially. That taste sucks because it's so contrary to what you're used to, right? So if I'm eating McDonald's every day, if I'm eating Wendy's, fast food, I got this grease taste in my mouth, then all of a sudden I decide I want to get healthy and I start eating broccoli and grilled chicken with a little bit of salt. That crap's going to taste nasty, right? It's going to take a while to get used to this new pill that I'm now forcing myself to swallow. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting you say that because I have my diet. My diet is such where through the weekdays it's pretty much just bland chicken and brown rice and sweet potato.
Right.
And so my daughter looked at it and she says, "Dad, I don't know how you do it." But then I get that one cheat meal. And to me, that cheat meal was some, couple tacos, right? But you enjoy that cheat meal so much, because you've worked to it, rather. And so that helps me in other things as well, not only in diet, but just in sacrifice and in discipline. So it's so many different lessons that you're getting from that, right? And I know we've been talking about the Stairmaster, but everybody is in this flux, do I go? Do I stay? Do I have this? But the net of it is, how do you win control of the mind? You talked about Joe Dispenza, and I love the fact that our minds is the record of the past, if you think about it, right? So we always go back to how we dealt with something else. But when you meet people that's doing things at a different level or a higher level, here's the thing, it resets perspective at that point. It's like, okay, well, I can touch, I can feel. I remember one time I gave a talk somewhere, and it was some young men in the audience. And a lot of times they hear the speakers talk about all the things they've done. And, and that's great. That gives you inspiration. I said, but I need for you to come. I need for you to touch me. I want you to touch me, right? And let me tell my story, right? Because there's something about being able to see it and touch it and do it. But it's resetting that mental block that we have. We all have it. And here's the thing right here is that, and I said this before, I do simple things so I can get confidence. I make my bed up every morning, okay? And the second thing I do is I sweep my kitchen at the end of the night. I've been doing that for years, right? I do that because it unlocks stuff. It's the consistency that I get in it. And now I can take that to my devotional time. I can take that to my cardio. I can take that to the relationships that I have with others. So it's the small things. So if you can win on the small things, you can win on the big things. Because if you think about the small things, they stack up and they become big things. And if you don't take care of the small things, they become big things in a bad way. I'm telling you, as I said before, you're going to pay somebody, you're going to pay the farmer, right? You're going to pay your doctor, somebody's going to pay the mortician, okay? And I can look inside of your refrigerator and tell you your future. And I've said that before, because if it's creamy or it's crunchy or it's chewy, I'm just saying, okay? Everything in moderation. All right.
Absolutely. And, you know, we need to, we understand that along this process, we understand the reality that motivation is a fleeting thing, right? You know, on Monday, I might get on that Stairmaster and go gung-ho, right? Tuesday might be the same, but with a little less energy, a little less ferocity. Wednesday, I'm just completely drained, but it still has to be done. And I think that we all brush up against that wall in our process. And I think an excellent tool to introduce for our toolbox now is the ability to frame, right? We have to understand what framing is. Okay, so framing for me is to be able to look at my situation. Okay, take the food, for instance, right? This bland food that I'm eating during the week, I don't necessarily want to do that, right? I want a burger. I want something because, you know, I'm working hard, I'm living good, and I need something to show me that I'm living good right now. I need some type of pat on the back.
Right.
But a frame allows me to remain steadfast and disciplined in that moment. For me with food, simply enough, it works. I frame it and understand food is nutrition.
Yep.
When I tell myself that simple phrase, it immediately realigns everything. Everything is back into perspective. So now in my mind, I know I'm no longer looking to this external agent for any type of consummatory gratification other than giving my body what it needs to perform at an optimum level. So and then you can take frames and reframe, and you can apply them to every aspect of your life. That thing that's going to get you motivated, understanding that motivation is a fleeting thing. So not necessarily motivation all the time, but more so that's going to keep you dedicated, right? So the art of framing. Go ahead.
I love that. I love that. I mean, literally, I'm reorganizing my furniture up here because that's so powerful. And it's interesting because as we have dialogue, that's why I said we're going to have dialogue today. I think about how sometimes you'll break it down, the scientific, aspects of it. But when I look at framing, at the end of the day, I'm asking myself, I understand the motivation gets you started, activation keeps you going, but it's the discipline that gets you finished, and discipline is what's left when motivation leaves. And I'm asking myself, how great do I want to be, and what am I willing to give up to get there? Okay.
Absolutely.
So, and case in point, I'm going to start this fasting, 48-hour fasting, right? And so 48 hours, right? So, and we're going to do it Friday through Monday. Right, I'm doing it on the hardest days, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I could fast, Tuesday through Thursday, but the weekends, hey, that's when I want to have my glass of wine, right? But I'm doing that to prove something to myself. And, I may throw in some cold showers as well, too. So I got fasting, I got cold showers, I'm already reading, but the net of it is, how do I continue to take myself to the next level? Because you can't give away what you don't have, right? And if you have a lot, and that's why we're here, it's just like this water in this cup, right? If I'm full with wisdom, you're full with influence and power, it means nothing if I can't empower someone else. So that means that I can keep giving what I have away and helping you frame and grow and be and have and lead. So I just think that what we're sharing, I love the dialogue because I'm able to rearrange my furniture and say, hey, I can continue to add to myself because we're learners at the end of the day. And that's why you all listen to this, looking at this podcast, because here's the thing right here. Just get one tip, okay? One tip from this podcast. I guarantee you. Okay, I guarantee it so much. I just came from South Africa, right? We just started our program over there. And I'm taking people through our program, my life skills program, which we're having our gala. It's going to be September the 19th. If that's okay, if I share that with folks, it's going to be up in New York, and you'll see folks graduate from our program. It's Tech and Life Skills Academy. Long story short is, I took them through something similar to reframe their mind in terms of faith, fitness, family, finance, fun, in terms of whole growth. And the individuals, I should say rather, not only have they changed mindset in terms of how they think, but now they're looking at how they can expand, with adding value to themselves with skills and reading and just community. Because at the end of the day, it's all about, and we're going to talk about, a lot of it is about service. So as you learn this stuff, you use this stuff, you give it away. And every single day, I go in the gym or I get a phone call, someone will call me and they say, hey, I need you. You're part of my board of directors. I'm like, really? Really? I mean, this is the kid that's from a small country town that had a big dream to save the world with a French name. Come on now, right? And look at us right now. We're on this international platform where we're empowering others and making a difference and impact. So brother, I appreciate you. I told you we're gonna have dialogue, and so we'll jump around, but I just want the audience to get one tip. And if you don't know what TIP stands for, I'm gonna tell you right now, the folks in the audience here, take it personal.
I love it. Yeah, so one quick visual for framing that you can take with you before we move on. Okay, so a lot of you live in single family homes, right? You have your front yard, you have your backyard, you have your wooden fence that encloses or encapsulates your backyard. So we're gonna say that fence that traps or encapsulates your backyard is your frame. And that fence, just like your frame, does several things for you, right? It helps you identify your property line and differentiate your property line from your neighbor's property line. It helps you to keep the large critters out of your backyard, right? So that you can water. If you were like me, when I was in the house, I would water my grass. I always wanted to see my grass green. So I watered my grass every day, and I took it very personal. Tip, I took it personal if somebody stepped on my grass. I really didn't like that, right? So framing is also a protective measure. So it's a protective tool for your toolbox. I want you to take that away and have that visual, and hopefully that'll help you to ingrain that very useful principle or tool in your arsenal. So shifting gears a bit, becoming the part without permission. I love that.
Well, think about it though. As kids, we're used to our parents telling us what we can do and what we can't do, right? We grow up asking for permission, right? I had a cousin that decided not to ask for permissions, and let's just say she was taken care of. Okay, but I always ask for permission. But the net of it is, as we grow up as adults, we find ourselves in this mindset of having to ask for permission to do certain things. If it's take leadership roles in an organization, or permission in the community. And really doing it without permission is just doing it. I mean, just making it happen. Here's the thing is, when I was in South Africa, I went to this place to grab something, and this person had the shirt on and it said leader on it, right? And so me being a philosophical person I am, I said, can you come over here for a second? And he says, yes, my brother. I said, you have leader on the back of your shirt. He said, yes, my brother, I'm the leader, okay? And now, while there was someone else that was mopping up and taking care of something that had spilled, I said, he's the leader. He said, no, he works for me. I said, no, he's the leader, right? So basically what I'm saying is that when you just take control, you don't have to ask for permission, right? You just do it. And I think a large part of the world, they're waiting for permission. They're waiting for permission to shoot this podcast. Literally, there wasn't a legislative mandate that we had to shoot today, right? We made a decision, right? We had a time, we had a topic, right? So we're creating something, right? You all are looking at this podcast. You'll gain value from it, right? Think about having a business. Here's the thing right here. Having a business is, I've said this before, stop chasing your work and start your job, brother, and start creating your work, okay? Your job is what you're paid to do, okay? But your work is what you're made to do. You see how comfortable we are? We're like a cheetah, two cheetahs in a jacuzzi right now. I'm just saying, okay? Because we're not asking for permission to share mindset, concepts, and add value. We're doing it. So think about that as it pertains to if it's starting a business. Think about that if it pertains to being great. Think about that if it's just being amazing. And that's what I love about life, you know? And here's the thing right here. I want to say this right here. The problem I think that we have is we have too many choices. Honestly, we have too many choices. Yeah, when you go to the store, how many choices of detergents that you want? I mean, how many states you want to go to? It's so many choices. But if you can just decide to be great, don't ask for permission, and just do it. Here's the thing right here. People will follow you. I guarantee you, if I went out and just built a building right outside of this studio, guess what? You have different types of people that come by. You have some people that look from afar and say, there's a building over there. Interesting. One day I need to go and see what's in it, right? You have some people that'll just pass by, and then you have a few people that will pass in, right? So when you start thinking about leadership and changing a company or changing a country, just do it. There's no permission that's needed. Seriously, I give you permission. I'm telling you right now. So that's really the premise of that. I shared that out of my heart because when I wrote this book, I was over in Brazil when I was cleaning up the last pages. I was in tears. Because just to meet the people that you have the haves and you have the have-nots. There's no middle ground. And a friend that I was staying with, we went to go visit their mother, and we're there, and she's 80-something odd years old, and she's cooking for me because of the love of me just being there. And so we're getting ready to leave out, and hopefully I don't get too emotional, because I still remember this moment. So I grabbed an umbrella, and I'm getting ready to make sure take care of her. And she does this right here. She grabs it from me. She walks me to the door. Didn't ask for permission, right? She opens the door. She said, "You are my guest." Isn't that something? Powerful, right? Powerful. So just take permission to be great. And so that's a little bit of backdrop, but I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so I like that. Becoming the part without permission. You broke it down beautifully in your book. It also called to reference for me another book that I read, Robin Sharma's The Leader with No Title, which pretty much has the same premise, the same principle around it. There was a bookkeeper, there was a housekeeper, there was a gardener, and there was a masseuse, right? And when you hear those titles, you wouldn't typically at first glance or at first hear associate leadership with those titles, right? But the way that they took initiative, right? The way that they loved the position that they were in the story, it tells you that each of those people in those respective positions had no desire to go beyond that particular station, but their job duties that they did every day took them beyond it. They were ambassadors to their company, they were managers, they were actually entrusted with making executive decisions by their leadership team. So yes, so you really don't need the title to be a leader. Yeah. And that also transcends our work life as well. And then I think with us from a mental health standpoint, and then from the fabric of a family standpoint, I've been guilty of this in the past. I go to work and I'm a manager, and I'm a certain way at work, and not even on the bad days, but on the days when I'm really good, I'm on it. I set expectations, we have meetings, I hold people accountable, I motivate, right? But when I go home, I take all of those hats off, right? Because I don't associate myself with my work. And I had to think about that. There was a huge disconnect there, because here I was I'm a pretty good leader, so I'm gonna talk a little bit. Here I am, this great leader at work, but when I get home, I'm this lackluster person, I'm this lackluster husband, I'm this lackluster teammate, because I don't apply those principles. A lot of us draw those disconnects because we don't like our jobs to begin with because we're not doing anything that's passion associated, right? But with what your principles are, leader with no title, passion without permission, we can sort of begin to bridge that gap. You know, what if I took those principles home with me? Yeah, leave the job, right? But the principles come home with me, right? What if we have weekly meetings, you know, husband and wife, we check in. How's the home life? How are you, right? Let's plan our next week. Let's do some financial planning. Let's do the house cleaning. Let's plan to do that, right? Women love being spontaneous, right? They want to go out on dates. They want you to know that you're thinking about them, right? All I got to do is come home and say, hey, baby, put your dress on. We're going such and such a place. She doesn't have to know that I planned that 3 weeks ago. I just told her then. So I'm checking that box as well, right? All because I'm taking the initiative that you're talking about, and now I'm becoming the leader, the executor, the CEO of my life, myself, my family, my household. So I love that.
That's powerful. That's powerful because if you double click that, you can apply those principles in every aspect of your life. You can apply it with the children as well, right? And hey, let's just create a game, any game, right? Kids love games, right? And again, as you mentioned, you know, with a spouse, and it's just so many different things when you just become the part without permission, because everyone's looking for leadership in some way, right? And so a lot of times I look around and I'll see things and I'll say, well, why not, right? Like, for example, in Mableton down the way, why don't we have more restaurants, particularly healthy eating restaurants, right? Why do I have to go to Smyrna, right? And so here's the thing is, I reached out to the mayor, right? And so maybe the mayor watched this podcast, but I reached out to the newly elected mayor, and maybe gives me an opportunity to talk to him. If not, right? But guess what? I have an appointment. And it just so happened, I got a call from the chief of staff last week for the mayor. I was in New York. I was actually getting ready to board a flight. And he says, I'm sorry, but the mayor's running a bit tad late, and we're going to have to reschedule your appointment. And I was in New York. I didn't get the schedule invite. I said, well, great. That'd be great. We'll reschedule it. Okay. But I just tell you that, right? So I'm becoming a part without permission because I see a need. And what you do is you always bring your seed to the need. That's it at the end of the day, right? So again, a lot of people pass by, but some people pass through. And these principles are so simple. Yeah, but they work. They work, you know. And thank you for the examples that you shared as well. I need a lot bigger notepad so I can take notes when you're talking. This guy's dropping some bombs here.
Thank you. No, so, you know, again, you did great with this. Becoming the part without permission. Before we move on to the next topic, I just want to hit one more thing. So I referenced earlier the external locus of control. And the psychological definition of external locus of control is when you believe that there are outside stimuli or outside influences that are controlling your life, right? As opposed to what an internal locus of control is, which means that you believe that you have control over aspects of your life. And I reference that because I believe that the internal locus of control, along with the concepts of responsibility and accountability, are the prerequisites to becoming the part without permission. And you have to have those things internally within yourself and know that this is not attached to any title or anything about that. These are internal attributes that allow me to look at a situation with a certain level of responsibility and accountability that produces initiative, right? And that says, you know what? I'm going to take this on, right? I remember Barack Obama, he was in someone was interviewing him, it was a while ago, and he was like, you know, I look for the guy that gets things done. Right? He's like, I don't care about the title. He's like, everyone is great at telling you what the problem is, right? But very rare, it's very seldom that you find someone that just, upon their own initiative, says, you know what? I took care of that. So become the person that says, you know what? I took care of that, or I'm going to take care of that. Because when you do, whatever your station is in life, I guarantee you, someone at some point will take notice of that, and they'll eventually tap you on that shoulder.
And here's the thing, becoming the part without permission, the beauty of that is that leadership is needed all over, right? Everything rises and falls on leadership. Quote by John Maxwell, I love it. And so you can become the part without permission. You can start, as you mentioned, in your house. Obviously start there, right? Because I don't care what external impact you make, but if you're not making the internal impact, with your family. So it has to start with your family. But think about just in the community, the HOA, the Homeowners Association, right? They're always looking for a president or a secretary, someone to volunteer. And in some cases, you're voluntold. I told you, I need you over there. But again, so this allows you to also hone in your leadership skills and sharpen your leadership skills as well too, when you just take control. And the other thing is, you don't have to be perfect to get started, but you definitely have to start to be perfect. And what I have found when I've became the part without permission is I just do it, right? I do it because it's the right thing to do it. I do it because nobody else is doing it. I do it because it needs to get done. And then I get excited, right? And then what happens a lot of times is people see you as the person. It's like, that's the person you want to go to, right? And if you do that in a company, I guarantee you'll get many, many, many promotions. And guess what? Becoming a part without permission, a lot of times it's just looking at the little mundane, laborious processes and tasks everyone's overlooked, right? Let me give you an example. Maybe there's a printer and the paper just falls off the printer. And what you do is you make it up on you get a larger tray, perhaps. Well, something that's small, right? But they're gonna see you taking that initiative, right? So if you call yourself a leader, it's not the title, it's all about the responsibilities that you have. And I love this chapter, and I think it's powerful. Apply some of these concepts because we need leadership in the household, in community, as well as in the country as well.
Absolutely. Which is a perfect segue to your next chapter, which is establishing your personal brand.
Oh, man.
I sense excitement.
I love it.
Give it to us.
And let me just say this right here. Establishing your personal brand. There's something called a 7-second rule, right? Have you guys heard of it? 7-second rule? Yeah, okay. So
I haven't actually.
In 7 seconds, people have already determined if they want to do business with you, right? They like you, right? Because people look at what you have on first before what you have in. When I first came here, right? You look at if the person is groomed, right? And the clothing that they have on. The body, right? So that's why it's important, working out, staying in shape, right? And now when you speak and you're able to speak in your demeanor, you speak with authority, right? So you have these ways of communicating your brand, right? And so I remember I was at a meeting one time, and it was all of the leaders of this company. We're all sitting at the table, and everyone was talking about the college that they had gone to, right? Harvard, Berkeley, Cal State, and it gets to me, and I'm the keynote there, Carter High School. So, but I looked the part, right? But obviously I had spoken before as well, but the net of it is when you can look the part and you create your personal brand, and then you start to build your trust and consistency. And all trust is it's built over time. So people have to like you, they listen to you, they trust you, and then they buy from you. I worked in sales, right? I never thought I would be a salesperson ever. I hate selling anything to anyone. But I became one of the highest salesperson for the company. You know why? Because of my personal brand. My personal brand got me in the room. Here's the thing right here. But my integrity and my character kept me in the room. That makes any sense, right? So your personal brand will help you do amazing things, but it's the trust, it's the consistency that you build from that. And you can do it in corporate, you can do it in any facet of your life.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, from a mental health standpoint, I love this chapter because, establishing your personal brand for me starts with what I see for myself, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, so grooming, cultivating myself, standing up, good posture. Like when I see that in the mirror, right? I'm telling myself a new psychological message, right? Like I'm giving a message of confidence, I'm giving myself a message of self-love, right? Which will help aid me on my transformational journey. Now, as far as what I'm presenting to the world, I agree with you 100%, you know, because similar with me, like, you know, I did go to college, but I didn't graduate, right?
Right.
But I tell people, you know, first of all, I'm a huge proponent of education, so let's not get that misunderstood.
Yeah.
Huge proponent of education. But I tell people, learn how to speak.
Yeah.
Speaking affords you a pass into arenas that you won't be able to get into otherwise. And when you pair speaking with proper decorum,
Yep.
you can literally go to the top. And when I say speak, I mean proper punctuation, good vernacular, an expansive vocabulary, right? Because it creates dichotomy, it creates intrigue. When you say, okay, that I graduated from Carter High School, but I'm using words in a meeting like juxtaposition, right? Appropriately.
Yes.
Right? That creates intrigue.
Yeah.
That creates buy-in.
Yes.
I want to know more about this person's story.
Yeah.
Right? And then again, you pair it with your grooming.
Yes.
Right? Your decorum.
Yeah.
And then specifically for men,
Yeah.
we have to get back to the realization, okay, being a gentleman is not just about treating women with respect,
Right.
which women need to be treated with respect. Let's be very clear about that. But being a gentleman encompasses way more than that. Being a gentleman is an actual art form, right? The way that you hold the door open, right?
yes.
The way that you're complimentary, your charm, right? See, when we say words like that, we immediately think the opposite sex. When we say words like attraction, we immediately think the opposite sex, right? But if I'm building a brand, if I'm building a business, then I definitely want to attract consumers. This podcast, we want to attract listeners to be able to extract some of this good food, right? So all of those are components to achieving that aim, right? So so I love this particular chapter, establishing your personal brand. And then the last thing I want to say that about that is Ray Dalio talks about that. He talks about the two types of education. He talks about the credentialed education, where you receive a degree, where you receive a certificate, right? But there's also an education of civility, right? So when you're those things, right? And we're as an aggregate, so on a large scale, what that does for a society, a city, a country, a society as a whole, right? It increases the fact that you'll be a loyal person, you'll be an ethical person, right? There have literally been studies that have been done that ties the level of civility to lawlessness, right? So all of those things impact society as a whole. So if we can see ourselves as individuals, yes, but see ourselves as an aggregate, as a part of a whole, and adapt these principles and personality, then we'll see the fabric of our families change. We'll see the fabric of our communities change. We'll see the fabric of our cities, states, countries, ultimately the world. And yes, that's a hard ask, right? But again, we're talking about the process. We're talking about one fry at a time.
Well, if you think about it this way right here, passion is so powerful where you can monetize passion, but you can't passionatize money. Think about it, right? So now here's the thing, is that you have to protect your passion also with your principles as well, and also discipline. And what I have found is that when you're passionate about what you do, what it does is it actually gives you energy, right? And so you find something that you're passionate about, it gives you energy, and then you're able to put a process around it. So my passion, truly, one of my passions in life is empowering, encouraging, equipping, and enabling people, right? One is so they can, stop reading and start thinking. Let me talk about that, right? slow down in terms of reading and think about what they read, right? Because what I find a lot of times is that people read to recite and to memorize versus to add value and maximize. And so one thing that I'm passionate about is how I can take content and material and break it down in terms of these examples I give you in story. I'm a storyteller at the end of the day. Now I can get up here and I can talk about the data points behind it, but the net of it is I'm passionate about teaching and sharing my life with others so they can do the things that they choose to add value to themselves and add values to their family. So when you think about the art of passion, it's powerful when you have passion. And everyone needs to have passion if there's a subject or if there's a career that you're going into, because again, it gives you that fuel. And it's interesting that at 2 a.m. this morning, I'm thinking about the podcast. And so I should be in the bed, but I had so much energy because we're reservoirs, right? But I really want to be a river and just to be able to share. But I think passion is a vital component of one fry at a time, because again, that's the spark, that's the energy that you have. And here's the thing right here is that if you're on fire with life, you're on fire with your career, why can't you give one spark to someone? Isn't that something? Because that one spark can start a fire.
I like that. Yeah, profound. The power of passion for me was impactful because obviously I tied it to my own personal experience, right?
Yeah.
So, the You versus You podcast is passion work for me.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows me personally, they know that I've always had a strong love for my people. And I always wanted the best for my people, for all people, but especially for my people. And I make no apologies for that. But a lot of my life I was all talk.
Yeah.
It took catharsis, like it took a jarring moment, right? And I referenced that in the last episode. Long story short, to get me to this point. So the reason why I say that is, for those that are mired in trauma, we're beginning our journey. When you get to the point to where you're able to look at your life objectively and assess it absent the emotion, and you may be able to resonate with this as well. When you get to the point to where you can assess it absent emotion, I think a lot of times you'll find your purpose on the other side, immediately on the other side of whatever that crisis, whatever that challenge was, right? Whatever that cathartic moment was, which ties it back to what we were saying earlier, redefining our association with what challenge is. So I found my passion on the other side of that. Another thing that I wanted to reference when I read your chapter, it made me think of Jordan Peterson, because he was right. To pursue something, before you pursue it, you have to take aim at a target, like a hunter, right? You have to have your target in your sights, and then you have to aim at it. And that's very important. So logically, we know that. Like when we think of the hunting analogy, logically, we know that, right? But on the subconscious level, we're mired in trauma. We're living waywardly. We're stuck in fight or flight. We're stuck in survival. So we're not thinking about the future. We're thinking about the immediate, right? But then the future becomes the immediate. And it seems like that happens in no time, right? Like tomorrow, it'll be 10 years later.
Right.
So we have to plan and take aim for that, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, when you think about passion, particularly for me, is what pains you usually gives you passion. So let me explain. So when I see a hurting people, right, it gives me passion, because now that goes back to me becoming a part without permission. Meaning it gives me passion to help where I can, right? I've talked about on the last show that we all have these gifts, right? I think you remember what gift stands for?
I do.
God included favorable tool, right? And so we can collectively use our gift and our passion guess what? We can help not only the people, but also we can create enterprises and business, you name it, right? So first it starts with something that pains you, you have passion, but what's really important also is to have a plan, right? So often I meet people that are very, very passionate about having their own business. And so my question is, where's your business plan? You have more business cards than business plans. So you got to have a plan, because the goal is that you want to want to make progress. But passion is essential in anything that you do. I don't care if you're baking some cookies. You better have passion about it. But the other thing about it is when you're passionate about something, just with the tonality of how you use your voice, you'll have people that surround you, right? Because they want to know what it is. Heck, John, who was it? Someone set themselves on fire so that people will come and watch them, right? Now that's passion. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far to set myself on fire, but I'm passionate about this podcast. I'm passionate about the impact that we're making in the world. I'm passionate about the people. Their lives have been changed. And just recently, I received some letters and emails from folks that had gone through our nonprofit, which is a Tech and Life Skills Academy. One person, they just bought their first home, okay? First time parent, and some of those concepts that we shared, faith, fitness, family, finance, they're applying those, So that brings a lot of joy just to see that. But that's a key element for anyone to have. If you're going to do anything that's great, why do something if you're not happy in doing it? Seriously, I don't care if you're sweeping a street, right? Have passion with it. Guess what? If you whistle, guess what? They'll give you a raise, okay? Before you know it, you'll be the manager.
The art of service to others.
Oh man, come on now. That's an easy one. Here's the thing right here. Service always comes before power. Think about it, right? If you don't believe me, the only time that you get power for service is when you pay your electricity bill. Seriously. I'm just saying. But the other thing with service is service also gives you connection first and then power, right? So there's so many different examples I can give you of just serving. Here's the thing. When you go out to a restaurant, I want you all to try this. Try this. I don't care how busy the restaurant is. You have the server that comes up and they're serving you, okay? And so what you do is you give them service. Thank you. I really do appreciate your service. Thank you so much, okay? And I've done this before. Well, this is going to be your tip in advance. And I let them see the tip. Thank you for the amazing service that you're going to give me, okay? And let's just say I get upgraded everything, right? I asked for the 6-ounce wine, I get the 9-ounce, right? But the art of service is so powerful, because at the end of the day, it's all about giving who we are to others. It comes back and you give it without asking. Seriously, my life, I was just so emotional just this past weekend of everything that came to me, business opportunities, relationships, right? And someone, and again, this is giving service, someone was looking for an opportunity, and I just happened to have a relationship with the chief financial officer for this entity, and the officer said, the CFO said, because of your character reference, we're going to pass that person's resume to the hiring manager, because I served, right? I served. And so I think that's essential with anything that we do. The other thing is serving your family as well, with my children. I'm a servant. My title doesn't say CEO. My title says Chief Servant Leader, right? And I'm thinking about how, as a shepherd, how can I feed the sheep, right? So basically, everyone in the company, I need to know what their vision board is, okay? Because their vision board should be on my vision board. That makes any sense, right? Because if I can help people get what they want, they're going to automatically give me what I want, right? Does that make sense? And I'm not saying that, motivation and manipulation, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is you do it from your heart, right? And from a spiritual perspective, serving at my place of worship, right? And I serve in the area of your gifting. Now, you all probably already know I love people, okay? So you better believe your boy's gonna be a greeter. And I'm a greeter because I get a chance to work on some jokes when I'm up there. And I just told a joke not too long ago. I'm gonna try it for the first time here on the podcast. If anybody used this, I want credit for it. But I'm serving, I'm greeting everyone because that is my gift. Grandmother comes out, she comes in, brother, beautiful dress. And I said, ma'am, you going to the club tonight? She said, baby, you know I'm too old to go to a club. I said, Sam Club. They have a special on some beans, aisle 6, okay? So again, timing and service, but that's where it starts.
Yeah, so service to others. And, one of the staple points in every episode is going to be gratitude. Gratitude in our mental health journey, that's the founding principle of it. Gratitude is what produces abundance. So this money that we use, that medium of exchange, that's the physical manifestation of what abundance is, right? But your willingness to be of service to others, that is currency, right? And when you do that on a karmic level, on a universal level, it's like a bank account. You're just storing favor away for yourself that you can extract in moments when you really need it. There was a reason why scripturally we were told to till the ground. Because yes, it's hard work, and you learn the most valuable lessons in life through the hardest work, through the most manual, strenuous labor. But that labor, that service also shows you the symbiotic relationship between how everything works in the world when you're of service and then others are of service to you, right? That encompasses everything in the world, right? I think capitalism has sort of diluted that a bit, but that's a conversation for another time. We all say cliche things, and in our lives, like things like, it's better to give than to receive, or practice what you preach, or whatever it is. And then one day in our lives, we'll hear that seemingly simple cliche phrase, and something just clicks inside of us. Because it's like we're finally aligned with the vibratory rate of that word or that phrase. So it just clicks. It truly is better to give than to receive. I think of times throughout the last couple of years, because I've been very giving, incredibly giving, of my time, because I'm just that way inclined. I've always been that way. But now I do it through a lens of awareness. I want to be conscious when I'm doing that. And I see the impact of that. And seeing the level of appreciation that a person may have gives me a better sense of fulfillment than any consummatory purchase I've ever made in my life. It truly does. It is so much better to give than to receive. And I say that because, again, this is mental health centered. And it's difficult. I said earlier, eating the broccoli, eating the green beans, the asparagus, the chicken with a little bit of salt on it. Initially, it's going to taste like shit. But this is essential to change your life. Gratitude is going to taste the same way when you've been living in lack and muck and mire, right? But there's no magic potion to success. There's no magic potion to abundance. You have to work the process that we're laying out. There's no other way around it. Every person that you look up to in this life followed the same process. You are not an exception. You are no different. So get after it before it becomes too late to get after it.
And one thing I want to add on that, when you think about service, it's interesting because when you serve, as you mentioned, there's the gift comes to you. It's weird though, so if you buy a gift for a child and you wrap it and they're just so excited, for what's inside of that box. But there's a feeling that you get, I can't explain it, right? And you want to do it again, you want to do it again, you want to do it again, because there's a feeling. And the work is happening actually underground, right? Because to your point, it's this gratitude. The other thing is that you separate yourself from the monetary, right? Because when you hoard things, that creates a mental block, right? My money, my time, my tithes, right? But when you serve, what you do is you divorce yourself from those things. So now those things don't have control over me. That makes any sense. Because the way I look at money, money is portable power. That's how I look at money, right? And also time as well, too. And so what I have found is that you may not see the value add immediately. I mean, I feel it rather, but it stacks up over time and it comes back, particularly when you're, one of the things that we're doing is we're impacting Africa with, some of the initiatives with the program that we have over there. And we've sown a lot of seeds, and that seed is obviously training. There's some things that we've done from a monetary perspective, and I'm not doing this for my sake. I'm doing it because of the gift, the long-term gift of impacting people and community, right? And so, to your point, it's happening underground. But the joy that I get, the letters that I get, and here's the thing right here, and I think it's really important to share, is that we get hit like everyone else. We get hit, but when I'm dealing with a fire situation, it's two ways I can look at it. One is I can go away from it, or I can go through it. I become fireproof. But that service itself, it comes back in some form or another.
Absolutely.
Right.
Lastly, before we wrap up, the 5 pertinent P's.
Oh, man. Wow. Well, I think we talked about one of them already.
I believe we did.
Right. And so one is you got to make sure that anything that you do, everything starts with a plan, right? You got to have a plan. Your plan for your waistline, a plan for your bank account. Planning is so essential. And that's one of the key areas for a leader, right? Is planning. In fact, I don't know what you all are doing the last quarter of this year, but this podcast is actually going to be in South Africa. Yeah, yes, it's going to be, we will have an in-person audience, right? And a lot of that is planning. Remember I talked about earlier that imagination is plastic. It's plastic, right? The way you turn that imagination into steel is going to be with action, right? So the first is planning. The second is your plan. What you have to do is now you break that plan down into pieces, right? Because a lot of times you don't see, you may not be able to see the details of the end, but you can see the details of the next step, right? And I've said this before. It's not about the direction in which a person, it's not in which a speed in which a person travels, but it's the direction in which they move, right? Because the steps add up. They give you the whole, right? So you want to make sure you have a plan. You want to break it down in small pieces. And then the next step is now you have to prioritize your day, right? Because if you don't prioritize your day, guess what? Your day will prioritize you. So if I have a big task, I broke it down in small pieces, and let's just say, I don't know, maybe I want to build a house, right? Well, the first thing I need to do is I need to make sure my foundation is there. Well, make sure I get the code, it's certified with the city. And then I got to prioritize that. And then next I want to put a foundation in place. And then next I want to put the framework. And then I want to put the roof over, right? And then the door is in, right? So think about that, from planning, breaking it into small pieces, being able to prioritize it. And the fourth P, right? Probably adding a P in there right there, is making sure that there's consistent process, right? It's not the big that you do, but it's the consistency in the process. And then last but not least, make sure you party. I know I got that right? I probably had another P in there, right? Let me tell you this right here. The reason why is that I would always say, get drunk with information and have hangover with success, right? Because the thing is that I love creating these big, bodacious goals. And then you set a date where you party and you talk about what you were able to accomplish with your friends. And what that does is it stimulates goals that they may want to create as well too, because it creates a purpose, that you're celebrating. And I love what Jim Rohn said as well. He said, be careful that the candles on your cake don't outnumber your accomplishments. And so, anyway, so hopefully that was helpful for you all, but it's one fry at a time. Let me tell you something. This little book here, I'm telling you, you can't just read it once, read it twice. It's only 77 pages, I believe, but I'm telling you, there are so many nuggets in there, and there's some quotes at the end as well. I think it's like 45 days of quotes. I'll read one to you. It says that you can make things happen or you can watch what happened, but not both, right? So get it. It will change your life. And I look forward to, the books that you're going to write and others in the audience are going to write.
As always, brother, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Just keep doing this right here.
You
I
bet.
tell you. Okay.
You bet. And lastly, spheres of influence. Surround yourself with people that are going to make you better, that are going to challenge you to be your very best self. If I look at who I'm surrounding myself with presently, and if the adage is true, show me your friends and I'll show you where I am in 5 years, I think I got a pretty bright future. Listen, if you found value here, and it's my sincere hope that you did, then please comment, like, subscribe, and share this information. Follow the You vs. You podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And keep checking me out, and we'll keep busting this thing down. Peace.
Just let me live. Now my mind's clear. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you.